It's part 7, and we've now arrived at the 500th page, 501. We have an overview here of the spinal nerves. One of the things I'd like to bring to your attention is that there are 8 cervical spinal nerves, 1 through 8. Notice that we actually have 7 cervical vertebrae and 8 cervical nerves, which means that C1 is going above the vertebra C1, C2 above vertebra C2, and so on, down to C7, and then C7 is right here actually, and we need a C8. The reason for that is that we then have T1. So T1 is going to contribute to the first rib, and it was decided to arrange it that way, T1, to go to the first rib. T2 will go to the second rib, and so on. We have 12 ribs. We have 12 thoracic vertebrae. 12 thoracic vertebrae and 12 nerves. So in order to rectify this extra nerve, the scientists decided to make it C8 and stick it underneath C7. So C7 nerve is above C7 vertebra, C8 nerve is under C7 vertebra, and then all of these proceed underneath the vertebra of that name. We come down here to the 5 lumbar vertebrae, and then we also have sacral nerves, and you might recall my discussion of the sacral openings, anterior and posterior openings for the spinal nerves, that the nerves actually divide right in the opening itself. Okay, so kind of an interesting detail. We end here at the disc on average between L1 and L2, which means we have all of these roots. So we have to think about nerve roots. Okay, so this is the overview. We do have coccygeal nerve 1 to go with our 5, following our 5 sacral nerves, which follow our 5 lumbar nerves. Okay, so that takes care of our spinal nerves in the big overview. And then as we look at them emerge individually here, we have this particular picture which helps us out. Here's the dorsal horn, the ventral horn, and you'll see that we have ventral roots. These are all motor, without exception. We have dorsal roots. These are all sensory, without exception. So that means I can actually draw an arrow right here pointing inward. This is all inward moving information. This is all outward moving information. Motor is outward, sensory is inward. Okay, and then let's come over to this side. You'll notice that the sensory roots come together in a connective tissue that where all of the cell bodies of these neurons are housed. Okay, and they're all surrounded individually. The cell bodies are surrounded by satellite cells. And of course, there's Schwann cells, increasing the speed of travel of signals along those nerves. Notice that the actual spinal nerve, here's the root. This is the ventral root, motor, coming out. Dorsal root with the dorsal root ganglion, called the dorsal root ganglion, that little enlargement there with the cell bodies. That's all inward coming information. Notice that we come together into a single spinal nerve very briefly. It exists just enough to fit into the intervertebral foramen, so we're able to exit the vertebral column through the intervertebral foramen, and that's running between pedicles. Okay, then we have rami communicantes coming right off of this ventral ramus right here, the ventral ramus or branch. The word ramus is a Latin word which means branch. And then we have the dorsal ramus. Doesn't really contribute to that much except extrinsic muscles of the back. This is much busier. The ventral ramus goes to to serve all of the muscles of the upper and lower extremities, are all from ventral branches, okay, of spinal nerves. Important detail. Notice that we have traveling going into what this elongated little system is here. This is the sympathetic trunk. It runs from T1 to L2. Okay, it houses all of your sympathetic, how shall I say, central nervous system cell bodies. From here, we're going to be having an outflow, which we'll take a look at in Chapter 14, the chapter after this one. But we need to sort of take a look that there's going to be a branch that comes in here. Usually there's a synapse here, and then there's a second order neuron which leaves and goes off and affects some target. So we have a two neuron system there. Okay, but generally I want you to understand that we have the spinal nerve, we have primary branches going posterior, anterior, and then we're feeding and relating to and plexing with the sympathetic trunk. Okay, then here's another view of that where we actually see the that branch going around here, either underneath a rib, or if it's in the abdominal region, it's circling around in this manner over here. Here we have a sternum, so this is for sure traveling under a rib. It's actually traveling in the subcostal groove of the rib itself. Okay, then we come over to the cervical plexus. The cervical plexus has a couple of really interesting features to it. One is that we always have an ansa cervicalis, which comes around the front of the neck and serves the infrahyoid muscles. Remember, the infrahyoid below the hyoid, pulling down on the hyoid, as well as the thyroid cartilage, and helping us swallow. So it's the downward movements that are affected by that nerve and those muscles. Here we have C3, 4, and 5. Keep the diaphragm alive. Okay, so that's the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve is going to go down to where do we have it here? C3, 4, and 5. Keep the diaphragm alive. Right, so we're picking up from C3, 4, and 5, coming down this way on either side, so left and right sides. It actually hugs the heart, the phrenic nerve does. It actually goes right into the fibrous pericardium of the heart itself. Okay, so it's actually embedded right in the connective tissue, covering the left and the right side of the heart, and then it hits, because the heart is resting on the diaphragm, then this nerve actually penetrates then into the diaphragm and innervates the diaphragm for breathing. Okay, so the vagus plays a role in, how shall I say, regulating the breaths, but then it is this nerve right here, the phrenic nerve, which actually innervates the muscle of the diaphragm. Okay, so that should cover all the bases that you generally need to know. What else you need to know here is probably that we do have cranial nerve number 12. This is actually, this is 11, this is 12 up here. 11 is actually from below, technically speaking. It's a spinal nerve, but nevertheless we're including it in the cranial nerves just because it's been numbered that way. So here's number 12 going to the tongue muscles. Here's number 11 actually re-entering the skull and then exiting the skull with numbers 9 and 10, and going in this case to the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius. Okay, then we come over here and we're going to take a look at the brachial plexus, and here I've configured the brachial plexus for you. There are handouts, or rather there are pictures on the internet, but I'll give you this one, and I will send you another one as a link, I think. So that's what I should do next. Is first of all, let's take a look here at the in this case, the brachial plexus officially only sometimes and occasionally includes C4, but it's always having C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1. Okay, so these are the primary ventral rami. These are the anterior branches of the spinal nerves, C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1. Okay, then with we come together, these branches, these anterior branches come together. The 5 and 6 make the upper trunk. We have the middle trunk here, and then we have the lower trunk here. So these are listed here as trunks. Somewhere they're listed. Oh, here they are. I blotted that out. Sorry, trunks. So we have the upper trunk, the middle trunk, and the lower trunk right there. And you can see which of these nerves branches are contributing. Then the trunks themselves actually have what are called divisions. And so the divisions are either posterior or anterior. So here all the posterior divisions of all three trunks come together to form this posterior cord. These are all cords here now. So we have the cords, and the cords are named lateral, posterior, and medial. So one thing you should ask yourself at this point is, what are they lateral, posterior, and medial to? And they are related to a large artery. So the subclavian artery is coming out this way. At this level right here, we're having axillary artery. So these are in that relationship by their name to the artery.